Imagine for a moment how much of your daily digital life just completely depends on something you can't even see or touch. These invisible, constantly evolving cryptographic algorithms. We're talking about the secret sauce, really, that protects everything. From that quick email you sent this morning, maybe, to every single online payment you've ever made. We trust them with everything. But, well, what happens when those algorithms just aren't strong enough anymore? Welcome to a deep dive into crypto agility. It's a critical concept, kind of quietly shaping the future of digital security. And we're unpacking insights from a brand new source, the NIST Cybersecurity White Paper Considerations for Achieving Crypto Agility, which actually just came out yesterday, July 17th, 2025. So today our mission is really to peel back the layers on this. We want you to understand not just what crypto agility means, but also the hidden high stakes game being played to secure your digital future. We'll look at past failures, future strategies, why this isn't just a tech problem, but, well, an urgent global thing for keeping our interconnected world safe and running smoothly. Okay, so crypto agility. It's a term I've definitely started hearing more, especially with this new NIST paper. For our listeners, who know their way around digital security, but maybe haven't focused on this specific idea, what's the core definition? And why is NIST making such a point about it right now?
Yeah, that's a great place to start. Because, the name sounds maybe a bit dramatic, but the concept itself is fundamentally practical. Crypto agility is simply the capability an organization needs to replace and adapt cryptographic algorithms. And that's throughout its entire digital infrastructure. So protocols, applications, software, hardware, firmware, everything. The basic idea is making these migrations between algorithms possible without causing, massive disruptive changes to the systems using them. And the urgency, well, that really comes down to a very real, very significant threat that's on the horizon. We're talking about the emergence of future cryptographically relevant quantum computers, CRQCs. These machines, well, they could potentially break our current public key cryptography, which means we're facing an urgent, really global demand to migrate to quantum-resistant algorithms.
Okay, so quantum computers breaking our current public key crypto, that's a huge shift. You mentioned the scale, though. How does this transition compare to, say, previous ones we've gone through?
Right. Think of it maybe like this. Previous crypto transitions were often like changing a single flat tire on your car. Annoying, yes, but you replace one thing. Life mostly goes on. This quantum transition, though, it's more like having to replace every single tire on every vehicle, on every road, all at once. The scale isn't just bigger, it's fundamentally different. Every public key algorithm will likely need replacing, not just one isolated one. And the NIST paper is very clear on this point. This PQC, or post-quantum cryptography transition, will certainly not be the last one required. This is, a continuous journey we're on now.
That 23-year transition for triple DES you mentioned, that just sounds like a historical nightmare. What's the single biggest lesson from that, looking towards this even bigger transition? Is it about the tech itself or more about, I don't know, human inertia?
Oh, that's spot on. History gives us some really powerful and, yeah, often painful lessons here. The shift from EES, the data encryption standard, to triple DES, and then finally to AES, the advanced encryption standard.
That's a perfect example. Triple DS was really just meant as a temporary fix until AES was standardized back in 2001. But NIST finally disallowed it only in 2024. That 23-year transition, it wasn't just about the technology. It was absolutely about how deeply embedded these things become and the organizational, maybe even just human reluctance to change what seems to be working, even if it's getting insecure.
It sounds like backward compatibility issues just make that reluctance even worse.
Oh, absolutely. Huge factor. Look at the SHA-1 hash function. Found to be weak way back in 2005, fewer than 80 bits of collision resistance. NIST urged federal agencies to stop using it by 2010. But because of exactly those backward compatibility nightmares, it was still allowed in certain protocols like TLS for years. Now, NIST is recommending a complete transition away from SHA-1 by the end of 2030. That just shows how deep these things get embedded and the incredibly long tail, the long time it takes to actually get rid of them. It's like trying to untangle a knot that's been tightening for decades. And that leads to the really crucial point. Algorithms just naturally weaken over time. Computing power gets better, cryptanalysis techniques improve. Take RSA, for instance. Its minimum recommended key size, the modulus size for digital signatures, went from Len 124 bits back in 2000 up to 2048 bits by 2013, just because factorization methods got better. Now, a lot of devices, especially older or simpler ones, have fixed key sizes built in. If they weren't designed to handle a larger key size later on, they might need to be replaced entirely. That's a huge, often hidden cost.
Okay, so You mentioned the new post-quantum algorithms, and one example, MLDSA, has signatures that are nearly 6 times larger than RSA for similar security.
That's right.
So does that mean our internet just slows down? Or are there clever ways around that? What's the practical impact on bandwidth for, the average user?
That's precisely the challenge, and it's a big one. Take that module lattice-based digital signature algorithm, MLDSA. For roughly 128 bits of classical security strength, it gives you a signature of 19,360 bits. That's 2,420 bytes. Now compare that to RSA. For the same security level, RSA needs maybe a 3072-bit signature. So putting those numbers in perspective, imagine your current digital signature is a nice, small, efficient package. With MLDSA, that same signature is almost 6 times larger. This isn't just some abstract technical detail, it's a fundamental shift. It could potentially clog networks, definitely slow down transactions, and it demands massive infrastructure upgrades just to keep things running at the speed we expect now. It's like suddenly needing a superhighway for every little local street, metaphorically speaking.
Okay, so we get the urgency, and we see how tough these transitions have been before. But where does this actually, hit the ground? When we talk about security protocols we use every day or the apps on our phones, how does crypto agility actually show up in our digital lives?
It really shows up everywhere, from the absolute fundamentals of communication right up to the apps on your phone. Let's start with security protocols. When two systems want to talk securely, think TLS for secure websites, HTTPS, or IPsec for VPNs, they do something called cipher suite negotiation. Okay. Basically, they agree on a specific set of crypto algorithms for that session. Encryption, key establishment, digital signatures, all that. Crypto agility here means an implementation can easily switch. Switch to a more secure or maybe just a more desirable cipher suite when it needs to, adapting to new threats or new standards. Now, for this to work smoothly, the protocols themselves need good ways to identify algorithms. Some protocols actually carry explicit identifiers for the algorithms being used, which makes crypto agility much, much easier. Others, unfortunately, kind of rely on just the protocol version number, which means you might need a whole new version of the protocol just to update the crypto. That's a much heavier lift for the standards bodies.
So the standards organizations themselves have to be agile too, not just the tech implementations.
Absolutely. Yeah, the standards developing organizations, the SDOs, they play a critical role. They define what are called mandatory to implement algorithms just for basic interoperability. But, like we said, these have to change over time. DPS and DDDS, they were mandatory once, but NIST eventually withdrew them. A positive step we're seeing is that SDOs now often use companion documents. These can revise the algorithm lists without having to modify the entire base protocol standard, which makes things a bit more agile. And that connects back to the difficulty of actually getting rid of old stuff, the deprecation challenge. Facilitating transitions also involves tools like cryptographic key expiration and revocation. Certain mechanisms, like the SMIME capabilities attribute or extension mechanisms for DNS EDN0, can signal, hey, I support these new algorithms. But honestly, there's often what the paper calls social pressure needed to actually remove deprecated algorithms, like getting the RC4 stream cipher out of web browsers. Implementers can be really reluctant to pull the plug because they worry about breaking things for users who haven't updated those backward compatibility concerns again.
Right, and that reluctance, that worry about breaking things, it points to a really critical need. Making sure the negotiation process itself is rock solid. Because if that negotiation could be messed with.
Exactly. You're leaving the door wide open for downgrade attacks. An attacker could potentially force the systems to choose a weaker, maybe even broken cipher suite, completely compromising the connection. So integrity protection on that negotiation is absolutely non-negotiable. This also brings us to an interesting concept: hybrid cryptographic algorithms. These basically combine two or more algorithms. For instance, you might combine a traditional one, like, say, elliptic curve digital signature algorithm, with a new post-quantum one, like MLDSA. The main idea is to preserve security during this PQC transition period, while the new algorithms are still maturing and gaining trust. The trade-off, though, is that they definitely increase protocol complexity and the resources consumed. And they might even lead to a second transition later on, when the traditional part of the hybrid scheme finally gets deprecated. So it's kind of a bridge, but probably not a permanent fix.
Okay, so crypto agility isn't just about the protocols humming along underneath. It's also about the applications we use and the hardware they run on, which sounds like an even bigger challenge to manage.
It truly is. Yeah, it extends right up the stack. For applications, things called cryptographic APIs, application programming interfaces, are absolutely key. What they do is separate the application code itself from the actual cryptographic algorithms being used underneath. This means ideally an application can make the same API call to use, say, AES encryption in one mode like CCM or another mode like GCM without the application developer needing to rewrite huge chunks of code. It allows for easier updates to the underlying crypto. Now, software libraries, things like OpenSSL or Boring SSL that many applications rely on, they typically operate in what's called user space. That offers more flexibility for updates. But some really critical security functions, think disk encryption or maybe the core parts of IPsec, they run directly in the operating system kernel. In the kernel, algorithms might be fixed when the operating system is compiled. That makes updates significantly harder, often requires system reboots, maybe even firmware updates, much more disruptive. And embedded systems, they're often an even tougher nut to crack. Think IoT devices, industrial control systems, cars. Their real-time operating systems, or RTOSs, often include only a minimal set of crypto primitives, and they're usually fixed at compile time, dynamically loading new crypto modules later. Generally not supported because of reliability concerns, things like secure boot mechanisms that verify the code hasn't been tampered with. I remember early in my career we dealt with a system, hundreds, maybe thousands of devices, all with fixed key sizes hard-coded. When the mandate came down to increase the key size for better security, it wasn't just a software patch. It meant physically replacing hardware across the entire network. That's the kind of hidden, very expensive challenge fixed key sizes can represent. And then, of course, there's the hardware itself. Integrated circuits, chips designed solely for specific cryptographic algorithms. Well, you can't change them once they're manufactured. If the algorithm becomes weak, the chip often needs a complete replacement. Things like hardware security modules, HSMs, or maybe the SIM card in your phone, a UICC, or trusted platform modules, TPMs, in laptops. They store private keys securely, but they often support only a limited, fixed set of algorithms.
And they're often designed to be purposefully difficult to replace for security reasons. Now, contrast that with general-purpose CPUs, which sometimes have special instructions to accelerate specific algorithms like Intel's SHA extensions or the RISC-V vector extension for SHA-3. Those can be updated via software more easily. So the bottom line really is, it's generally easier to provide multiple cryptographic algorithms to facilitate agility in library and application software than in hardware. Hardware agility is the toughest part.
This all sounds like a massive, continuous effort,
Yeah.
and honestly, a potentially huge cost for organizations. Is there a counter-argument? Is there a school of thought saying, look, this quantum threat might still be pretty far off? Are we maybe over-investing right now in these costly overhauls based on something that isn't an immediate danger?
That's a really valid question, and it's a critical part of the risk assessment calculus for any organization. The NIST paper actually addresses this directly by framing crypto agility not as some separate panic-driven project, but by integrating it right into an organization's overall risk management framework. So it's not necessarily about blind, immediate, full-scale replacement of everything everywhere. It's about having a crypto agility strategic plan for managing organizations' crypto risks. This plan combines governance, doing a thorough asset inventory, performing risk assessments, and using automated tooling wherever possible to proactively address these evolving threats. It really aims for smart, prioritized investment based on actual risk. The paper outlines 5 main steps in this kind of plan. First, you integrate crypto agility thinking into your existing governance structures, understanding the standards, regulations, mandates that apply to you. Second, you have to comprehensively inventory all the cryptography used across the organization. Identify critical data, application code, hardware, protocols, everything that relies on crypto. That's often a huge eye-opener itself.
Third, identify gaps in your existing enterprise management tools. Can they even find all this crypto automatically? And enhance them if needed for automated discovery. Fourth, develop a prioritization list. Based on your risk assessment, figure out what needs mitigation first. Focus on what the paper calls Crypto Agility Key Performance Indicators, or KPIs. And finally, fifth, implement the strategy. Use automated tools where you can, or maybe implement compensating security controls, like adopting a zero-trust architecture, if certain assets simply aren't agile enough right now.
Okay, so it's less about one giant disruptive project and more about weaving this capability, this mindset into the fabric of everyday operations and overall security policy, making it business as usual almost.
Precisely. Yeah, business as usual is a way to put it. And governance is a huge piece of that puzzle. It includes staying on top of cryptographic standards, regulations, mandates like the NIST publications, SP 800-131A, which lays out transition schedules, or the Cryptographic Algorithm Validation Program, CAVP, which validates implementations. It also demands clear crypto security policy enforcement. That means good communication and synchronization between the cryptographers, the developers building things, and the policymakers setting the rules so policies can be updated quickly when needed. Technology supply chains are also critical here. Vendors need to enable modular updates, and organizations need visibility into the cryptographic components coming from their suppliers. And finally, having a solid cryptographic architecture provides that technical blueprint for how an organization actually integrates and manages all its crypto functions coherently.
Looking ahead then, beyond these current strategic plans, what are the really big rocks? The major areas for future work, for research to make this whole crypto agility thing happen more smoothly, especially as threats keep evolving?
Well, the resource considerations we touched on earlier are probably the most difficult practical challenge, especially with those much larger post-quantum algorithm sizes. We desperately need more research in hardware optimization. Things like how to reuse cryptographic accelerator hardware for different algorithms, and also designing new algorithms that maybe share underlying mathematical primitives to save space and resources. There's also just a clear overarching need for what the paper calls agility-aware design. Basically, products and systems need to be designed from the very start with agility in mind. Support for new algorithms, flexibility in key and parameter sizes, secure ways to actually do the transition. The paper even suggests including a dedicated crypto agility considerations section in all new technical standards, which I think is a great idea. We also have to be honest about the trade-off between complexity and security. Adding features to accommodate agility inherently introduces complexity. And complexity, if not managed very carefully, can increase the attack surface. Like we said, if that cipher suite negotiation isn't properly protected, it could open the door to downgrade attacks.
It's a careful balancing act. Crypto agility in the cloud is another important area to consider. You have that shared responsibility model, right? The cloud provider secures the underlying infrastructure, and they often offer APIs for crypto functions, making their infrastructure agile. But the customer is still responsible for managing their data and applications securely on that infrastructure. So leveraging the provider's built-in crypto agility effectively becomes a key part of the customer's own strategy. And finally, there's a really powerful concept discussed: developing a maturity assessment model for crypto agility. This would likely be derived from the existing NIST cybersecurity framework tiers. Partial, risk-informed, repeatable, and adaptive, to help organizations actually measure their progress. Partial would mean, informal, reactive approaches. Risk-informed means you have management-approved practices, but maybe they're not fully integrated everywhere. Repeatable means you have standardized, consistently updated processes. And adaptive, the highest level, represents a proactive, continuously improving dynamic approach based on understanding the evolving risks.
This kind of model helps organizations see where they are and chart a path forward.
And thinking really big picture, is there like a holy grail here? Something that could fundamentally make this easier for everyone involved?
Well, the paper identifies a really interesting need: the idea of a common crypto API, a standardized, universal cryptographic interface that could abstract away all the complex underlying operations and really support smooth transitions between algorithms. This would have to be a huge collaborative effort, probably led by industry. But imagine a world where integrating a new cryptographic algorithm becomes almost as simple as just updating a software library, regardless of the underlying operating system or hardware. That would be a massive enabler for true widespread agility.
So as we wrap up here, it's really clear that crypto agility isn't just some technical term buried in cybersecurity papers. It's actually a vital future-proofing strategy for our entire interconnected digital world. It demands continuous communication, constant adaptation, and a really deliberate approach to managing digital risks, always trying to stay ahead of that curve.
Absolutely. And achieving any kind of measurable maturity in this area, moving up those tiers we talked about, it really requires ongoing and significant effort. It's not a one-time fix. It involves cryptographers, developers, implementers, policymakers, security practitioners. It's a collective, dynamic responsibility that genuinely touches every part of our digital lives.
So maybe next time you securely access a website or send a sensitive message or even just boot up your computer or phone, take a second to consider that invisible, incredibly complex dance of cryptographic algorithms happening constantly in the background. How does this deep dive maybe change your understanding of the constant, often unglamorous, but absolutely vital work that goes into keeping our digital world secure? And what does it really mean for the long-term trust you place in the technology you use every single day?